So that was very useful even for me. I wish those first two talks were pretty amazing. You'll see I'm at a research intensive institution, and it's going to kind of show a little bit. But I'll just tell you, at where you guys are right now, at your stage of your career, you were doing better than I was doing, because I was at ASBMB when I was a grad student. I didn't win the travel award. In fact, I was stressed out the first time I did win something, because I was like, do you put that on your CV as the award? You know, everybody has an awards and honors section, but do you have a section called the award? You know, or do you just leave it off until you get something else? So I was an undergrad in Boston, at Boston University, and I had a peculiar path. So I'm just going to babble here for 10 minutes until they tell me to get off the stage. But I think it's interesting in that, serendipity played a huge role. And I was at a career fair as an undergrad, and I met somebody from Mass General Hospital, and I was interested in doing research in a lab. And I don't understand how it happened, but I ended up having a meeting with Jim Gesell, one of the guys who identified and cloned Huntington's disease, and now he's the head of neurogenetics at Harvard Medical School. And he said, so you want to do research? And I said, yeah. And he said, and you have work study? I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay. 5 minutes later, I'm in a lab at Harvard Medical School, and it was a very interesting lab. So this academic industry thing, I've been exposed to both, and my experiences are a little peculiar in that the first academic lab at this Harvard Medical School lab was really more of a 9-to-5 technician heavy. It was almost more of an industry-like lab. It was a human genetics lab, and everybody had their thing to do. And it was a really great experience. But when I finished school, I wanted to go into a biotech, and Boston has many biotechs. So I got a job somehow at this medium-sized biotech, about 100 people, and it was a very academic environment. So these are all former postdocs from Harvard, MIT. It was spun out, this company, I think, by a bunch of different MIT professors. And I was part of this antifungal drug program, but I clicked with a postdoc, and I was moonlighting and doing random things. I had my responsibilities, but it was very academic-like. In fact, we would go to the Boston Area East meeting, which was held at the Whitehead Institute at MIT, which is where I ended up doing a postdoc, and that was I was just blown away by the concept of going to this meeting where there was pizza. I was always lured by this food and donuts and things like that, and beer. I was 22, I guess, and that was also a free beer, seemed to work pretty well. But this idea where you see this, and I think there was just amazing innovative work going on at the time, the Yeast Essential, deletion project, and all these things, all these systematic approaches. And we would go see these talks, have pizza, and then we'd go out after and discuss the work. And I just loved it. And it was really clear to me, though, that the people, and I thought all biotechs were like this, right? So it was clear to me that the people who had the interesting jobs in this biotech, this is the only sort of career thought that I think I put it, that really I could offer you, was that they all had PhDs. I'm like, okay, it seems like I have to go and get a PhD. So I did this after 2 years. And there were 3 of us. When I first started biotech, I was thinking about business school, law, I met, all these different things. And I decided I wanted to get a PhD. And so I had very few criteria. I knew I didn't want to be in Boston. I didn't want to be in New York. I'm from New York. All my friends were, making oodles of money. I didn't want to be around people like that, where they're like, let's go for, sushi or French, and I would have like $6 in my pocket. So I wanted to be around other poor people that when they went out, would discuss science. So I applied really only to schools in California. I was like, this is a good. So I ended up at UC San Diego, and as the previous speaker mentioned, it's a fantastic place to be a broke graduate student. It's a very low cost of living and a very great lifestyle. And there, my goal was really to go back into biotech, right? So, I'm doing my PhD, but I kind of like it. I was in a pretty big lab, fantastic scientist, National Academy of Sciences member, won all sorts of awards, but he had this really great mentoring style, and I didn't think I was going to end up in his lab. It was a DNA repair, biophysics, biochemistry, genetics lab, and I came into grad school thinking I was going to do neuroscience, but someone said to me when I was working at this company that it's about the relationship with your mentor. You could always do whatever you want after. It's a skill set. You have to have the right environment. And that was true. I rotated in a Alzheimer's lab, and it was just a horrible experience. And she was a very nice lady, in case this is being videoed, but it was a very small lab. It was me, the PI, and a technician. They didn't get along, and it was just too small for me. I'm from a big state city, and I needed space. And so I ended up rotating this guy's lab, and I just didn't leave, and I was doing this project, which actually ended up being a paper 12 years later somehow, which was published literally 3 years ago. But yeah, at some point I was just, he's like, I'm just doing my work, doing my screen, and it was 10 weeks into my 8-week rotation, and he's like, are you planning on staying here? And I'm like, yeah, okay. And he's like, you just have to let me know. I just needed to know that because, there's paperwork and stuff. He's like, are you happy where you're sitting? And I said, yeah. Okay, and so that was that, and I just stayed there for many years. And they had to kick me out of the grad program. I published papers and all this stuff, but they were bringing down the average. You got to get out of here, and I was very happy. I didn't have senioritis as a grad student, but I was a little pessimistic. You hear about all the post-apocalypse and how difficult it is to move forward. So I said, the hell with it. I was thinking about the right postdoc to do. At this point, I decided I actually enjoyed academia, for whatever that meant. And I said to myself, what's the path that would make most sense considering my skill set? And then I thought to myself, well, it's so damn difficult anyway, might as well just do whatever you want. So I completely switched fields, and I joined this giant lab at the Whitehead Institute, Susan Lindquist lab, and it was a really fantastic experience. And I joined it partly because it was super diverse, and there was people doing neurodegenerative disease and solid-state NMR of amyloids, and cancer genomics, and yeast genetics, and chemical biology, and I just loved this environment. It was like a department. And I'd say one of the things I liked most about the postdoc experience was just going for coffee. The people I went for coffee with every day are now professors at Stanford, UT Southwestern, at the Weizmann in Israel, and these are my friends, and in Toronto, also at Northwestern. And I think my 2-sentence summary of it all is that it's the journey. So like this idea that, although the first 2 talks were very good, actually now I do buy into that. I just wish I was exposed to that sort of guidance and mentorship when I was younger. But it's truly, for me, if you don't enjoy the journey, it's like, oh my gosh, it's a horrible kind of thing to put yourself through to get to some point, because the reality is just the whole thing is the point kind of moves over time. If the point was to get a postdoc, then when you're a postdoc, okay, it's not that exciting to be called a postdoc, right? And then when you're an assistant professor, it's, okay, we're here, but now you don't want to get fired, so you have to do stuff. So it's like, so you're constantly part of this journey, and if you don't enjoy that journey, then you should just kind of do something else, I think. But also, this idea, like biotech, I think within it is as diverse and interesting as the difference between the companies within biotech are as different from each other as an academic lab can be from biotech too. So I think you have to really keep an open mind and just enjoy what you're doing and not stress out too much. Of course, it is a good idea to absorb as much information as possible from people who are in positions where you think you want to go, so you kind of know what it's like, I think. And and I'm loving what I'm doing, and it's been a fantastic experience. I have no idea how many minutes I've talked for, so we're Oh, okay. So I'm running a lab here, and it's peculiar. You leave this place where you're like this high octane postdoc doing all this work, and then you're in this empty office for a while. You're kind of excited to talk to the sales reps because there's no one else. It's just you, right? And and then you have one person, then you have 6 people. It's pandemonium, and it's crazy, and then things settle down. But it's a lot of fun. And in terms of, I also have this weird view of, we'll see how it works out for me. But my view of the beginning part of this assistant professor phase, it's a very unique moment in that we have funding and energy to do lots of different things. So we do dabble. We have our kind of linear projects that we're focused on, but we're certainly, exploring and, taking advantage that we're not slaves to grants yet, and that we have some freedom and flexibility. And also being at MIT, I got exposed to this idea that the lines between academia and industry are fading big time. So there are very robust mechanisms to translate and to develop ideas that you generate So my baymate ended up spinning off a company with our PI and a couple other people in the lab. And, you know, this is it was his academic postdoc that was published in journal, you know, in papers that they, you know, it turned out to be pretty useful, some of the ideas. And he was able to translate this and move forward with it in a biotech setting. So I think I think this is a really exciting time to be a scientist, because really all of these lines and things that used to exist for many of us are kind of faded, and I think you could just do so many opportunities. So it's very exciting. Be happy to talk more throughout the day. Thanks.